Cool. What's up, y'all? So, in today's video, I'm going to talk about dopamine. So, recently in my life, I've cut back on a lot of dopamine sources, and nowadays, I don't really do too much stimulating activities. I quit drugs, video games, I don't watch porn, I don't eat junk food, I don't do any of these high dopamine activities that most people do. And I think if you really want to concentrate and get something done in your life, it's so important to cut out these things. Now, the concept of dopamine. What exactly is dopamine? Well, dopamine, as most of you guys know, is the motivation chemical, and it also releases uh, good emotions. When you think of dopamine and dopamine gets released in your brain, you feel good emotions. And so basically, there's two important things you have to know about dopamine. The first thing is dopamine makes you feel really good. And the second thing is dopamine drives you to do things. So if you want to get something done in your life, then it's going to be hard to do if your dopamine receptors are really messed up. So what happens with most people is they'll do a bunch of stimulating activities. So let's just have a random example. We have our guy named Jake. Okay, so my man Jake, he's say he's like a 17-year-old in high school. He's in senior year of high school. So Jake, he goes to school, right? He does whatever, but he comes home. He decides to hop on some video games. All right. So Jake, for 2 hours, he's grinding Fortnite with his guys, and Jake has a big test coming up tomorrow, right? It's Thursday night, and Jake has a big math test on Friday that he really has to do good on because, Jake hasn't been doing the best in school recently. I'm not gonna lie, Jake. He's kind of been shitting the bed. He's been getting the bad grades. My man has not been doing his homework assignments, and he just has not performed the best in school. So Jake's got this big assignment on Friday, and today's Thursday night. So he comes home, he plays video games for 2 hours with his boys. Then after he's done playing the video games, he decides, I'm gonna go on Instagram and just see what's good with Instagram. So he scrolls on Instagram for like an hour, scrolls TikTok, all this stuff, and then he's like, "Damn, I'm getting kind of bored, and I'm also kind of hungry. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go get some McDonald's. I'm hungry." So he eats all this food. There's all this sugar in there. He gets sweet and sour sauce with a bunch of sugar in it and a bunch of nonsense. He eats up the McDonald's, and then he probably feels like shit because of all the seed oils. And then it's around like 6 p.m. and there's 4 hours left in the day until he has to go to bed if he wants to get a good night's sleep. And he's like, "Damn, I really do not feel motivated at all to get this math test done. It's really boring, and I need to study for it, but I'm gonna get super bored because it's just a super boring activity, and I feel no motivation to go ahead and do it." So what has happened here with Jake? What has happened is his dopamine receptors have been all fucked up from all the stimulating activity he's been doing, and now when it comes down to actually get some work done and do something productive, he can't do it. Now, let's get John. All right, my man John. So, my man John, he's aware of dopamine and the concept of dopamine. And because John is aware of what he needs to get done, he doesn't act like Jake, where he's doing a bunch of stimulating things. He cuts back on all the stimulating things and he reserves his dopamine receptors for the important tasks that he actually has to get done. So, instead of coming home and, uh, doing some nonsense like Jake, playing some video games, eating some bad food, scrolling social media. And so what John does is he gets a nice workout in, okay? He does a positive activity that's actually going to benefit him. He goes to the gym with his boys, all right? He goes with his squad and they're hitting PRs at the gym and shit. And John, he's also in the same class as Jake, and he also has this test coming up tomorrow. Now the difference between John and Jake is immediately after he's done, he studies for like an hour. And guess what? My man John has already been studying like the days before. He hasn't put it off the last minute, so he's already ready to go. And John actually enjoys the process of studying because he hasn't fucked up his dopamine receptors like my man Jake. You see, if you end up like a Jake, then what's going to happen to you is whenever it comes time to actually do something productive to move you forward in life, you're not going to want to do it. So if you're like Jake right now, if you're just like my man Jake, what you have to do is you need to cut back on all your dopamine receptors, okay? Now, you can do what's called a dopamine detox, where you cut back literally everything. You go cold turkey and cut back literally everything. If you do this, just bear in mind it's going to be very difficult the first day or two, and you're going to be super bored. You might even be depressed. Like genuinely, you're going to be depressed because you're going to want to seek out dopamine from the activities that you've been doing, but because you're disciplining yourself, you can't do those activities anymore. So you're going to feel like really bad. And what happens with dopamine is it spikes up when you do a stimulating activity, but then it dips below your average levels when the activity is done. So if you do something super stimulating, afterwards you're going to feel worse afterwards because it dips below the normal levels. So you're going to feel like shit for the first 2 days, but I recommend cutting it back slowly, eliminating 1 minute habit at a time, and instead replacing those bad habits with good habits that aren't going to fuck up your dopamine as much. So in conclusion, don't be a Jake. Be like my man John. And when you are like my man John, what happens is you're able to get stuff done and you're actually able to enjoy the difficult tasks. Now imagine this. It's such a beautiful experience when you actually look forward to working on your business. Now business is not usually the most enjoyable thing, but say you have a really nice podcast that you're going to listen to while you work or while you study. Then that's actually a super enjoyable activity, and when your dopamine receptors aren't all fucked up, you'll actually enjoy it and get more stuff done. So in conclusion, be like John, don't be like my man Jake, fucking up your dopamine receptors, and get some more shit done by resetting your dopamine receptors, cutting back on high dopamine activities. And once you do this, you'll start to enjoy regular activities more because your dopamine is going to be reset towards productive things and things that are actually beneficial to you instead of things that are just wasting your time and taking away your energy levels and your happiness.